meeting is being recorded.
Welcome, everybody, to Boston 9/11 Truth. Today is September 25th, 2025, and today we have Ross Muir from New York, and he's got a wonderful presentation to share with us. I hope you all saw his little segment on the Lawyers Committee and Richard Gage's crime scene courtroom. He's an engineer, and I'll let him tell us a little bit more about himself. But first, we need a little housekeeping that we always do at the beginning. Just a quick disclaimer. The thoughts and views and opinions expressed by the speakers are their own and do not necessarily represent the thoughts, views, and opinions of Boston 9/11 and Truth. The material and information presented here is for general information and educational purposes. The Boston 9/11 Truth name and all its forms and abbreviations are the property of its owners, and its use does not imply endorsement of or opposition to any specific group, organization, product, or service. Boston 9/11 Truth aims to inspire and promote action by the truth advocates who support them and their efforts. And during our presentation tonight with Ross, all participants are asked to abide by our guidelines, summarized as following. During the entire meeting, all participants are asked to use polite decorum and are expected to be respectful of all other participants and the speaker. No personal attacks are allowed. Of course, a disagreement and debate are allowable as long as the content, not the person, is confronted. Voices are to be kept at speaking level of sound, no shouting, and no one interrupts another person. There will be only one warning and one warning only for anyone who does not abide by these guidelines. So the first part of our meeting is Ross Muir's presentation. The presentation is to be presented in full without interruption, and we are to treat the speaker with respect, and especially if there is disagreement. There will be a Q&A following Ross's presentation. So, Ross, welcome heartily to Boston 9/11 Truth. We're so honored to have you here. Tell us a little more about your background and what got you into the truth movement.
Okay, well, first, thank you again, Susan, at Boston 9/11 Truth. I've heard only good things about you over the years. One of the first groups I heard about, actually, as well. And, well, what got me into 9/11 Truth was being there on the day, later in the afternoon before World Trade Center 7 came down. I was with my fiance at the time, and we decided to get on our rollerblades and head down there. We were able to get past people, the police on Canal Street. Everybody was pretty much in shock. So all you had to do was say, well, yeah, you have an apartment down there. And the police were just letting you, they were just shaking their head and letting you go. So we went and got down around Reed Street, which is about a quarter of a mile away from Ground Zero. And we had to stop on Canal Street on our rollerblades. It's fine. There was no dust, no nothing. Wow. Once you passed Canal Street, got within about a half a mile, it started accumulating the dust, and it accumulated very quickly. Before I knew it, we had to stop. We got to Reed Street, again, about a little more than a quarter mile away, and we were in 6 inches of this dust that was like, okay, well, we're not rollerblading anymore. So we had to turn around, and that was actually very lucky for us, because we just missed World Trade Center 7, and we were in that corridor there where you see all that dust cloud come. literally 15 minutes before it came down. And we had no idea. We left and got into a place called the Spring Street Bar down there on close to Canal Street on Spring Street. And of course, everybody's in shock. And we didn't have any communications in Manhattan that first day until 2 p.m. And that was only cell phones got returned. But television didn't come back for 2 weeks. All the television towers were on top of the World Trade Center 1. So we didn't have television. We were relying on AM radio, right? As things were happening. And then, we got our cell phones back around 2 o'clock. Everybody, frankly, was frantic, to contact their loved ones at 2 o'clock. So the lines were jammed anyway. So we really had nothing to go by but our senses. And my sense, one of my senses was the smell and the heat. And as an engineer, and then the dust, of course, being so fine and being so thick and being so far away from ground zero and being so complete. I mean, it was complete like snow. It was covered everything like snow, very consistent. Um, I'm a photographer too. I went to bring my I was thinking, well, do I bring my camera down there? But I didn't. I'm not that kind of photographer, and I didn't want to get the carnage. It's probably a good thing. But I did bring those Kodak film canisters that you used to have in the day, and I collected dust samples. I said I got to have some kind of record of something that's down there, so I collected dust. It was the obvious thing to do.
Right.
There wasn't anything else there, and you couldn't get close enough. So fine dust and the smell and the heat of it. The powder was still, even at 3 o'clock, 3:30 in the afternoon, was still warm. And so that's when I said to myself that week and that time, okay, the world has changed. And now I'm a self-employed engineer, self-employed without a license. So, you kind of rely on a really good economy for that kind of business.
Right.
And I realized, well, the economy's completely changed. I lost half of my clients and my jobs that were ongoing, half of them on that day. We all got faxes. That's how we communicated back then. We didn't have the email, it was faxes. And it was the fax, okay, well, the project is put on hold indefinitely because of the events of 9/11. I was also to get on a plane that evening to go to Europe. I was to be in London first for a project that I had going, Jill Sander, London. And then I was going to be in Venice, Italy, of all places, for an opening party of a project I did for Ferragamo in Venice, their flagship store. And my sister was actually, coincidentally, was going to Europe. So we were actually going to meet there. I said, Laura, I can get you into this party, no problem. And Sophia Loren was at the party. That would have been really that would have been the peak of my career. I'm pretty sure I would not have gotten any higher than that. That was like it. So it was pretty, heart depressing and kind of sobering to have to go through that day on 9/11 and realize, wow, boy, none of that's happening. And who knows if it'll ever happen again? Probably will not happen again.
Right.
So that's what got me started on this path. But I started with the idea that I had to figure out the financial world. I said, the financial world, there's something wrong here. I got those dust samples and I said, we did these tests in college. We used to smash stuff, bend stuff, break stuff. Concrete got crushed. Nothing ever turned anything even close to powder. And so I was thinking, so a building's collapsing. Maybe it's the huge size, but the smell of it made me realize, well, the answer's in this dust, whatever it is, the pulverization, the disintegration, the smell, it'll be in the dust. And we'll just have to wait for the government to tell us what that is. At that time, I said, well, it's not just the planes. There had to be other secondary bombs that the terrorists plotted. For years I thought, well, yeah, the terrorists did it. They
Right.
just had other things going on besides the planes. So anyway, I studied the finance because I said, I got to survive now. And I'm self-employed. Started getting into finance heavily and realized in around 2008, before the big financial crash, the real estate market bubble crash, I pulled my money out of the stock market 2 months before that crash happened, when the stock market was still high. I was telling everybody, I said, hey, there's a lot of problems. It's not going to be good. So I basically was studying all that And around that's when the time when all the bailouts happened, I realized it's corrupt as hell. It's everything is really corrupt. And I started thinking back to about 9/11 because I'd been hearing little things in Brazil and different places like, well, Bush was involved. It wasn't, there's evidence of explosives. It didn't make sense with the hijackers. I had at the time I thought, well, I believe Bush because he to me, I was naive and thought, well, he's pretty genuinely was in shock. So I thought, well, it happened one way or another, but then I was forced to confront, well, okay, you always thought the dust samples were going to be the thing. And so in 2013, my brother Daryl is also an architect. He said, you got to look at the World Trade Center again, which was something I was really avoiding. I suspected there was so much corruption that might be part of it. And but it was very painful. Every time I only saw it on the TV version twice, and the whole thing was so painful. I didn't want to go through any of that again. And I said, okay, I'll look at it again. So when I looked at it again with fresh eyes in 2013, it was like the first time I saw it. It was like they're blowing up. The buildings are blowing up. They're not collapsing. This isn't floor slabs collapsing. This isn't some kind of maybe it's explosives in the building that the terrorists planted, but they're blowing up. They blew up the buildings, the terrorists. And so then I said, well, you got to check the dust sample studies. I went to I think it was Architects and Engineers at the time. My brother pointed me to that website. He was already on there. I joined it subsequent to that. And and of course, there's where I found out. Well, they asked the government, well, what did you find in the dust samples? And the answer was, of course, well, we didn't need to study the dust samples. It wasn't the buildings were not blown up. And of course, the answer from engineers was, well, hey, what did you even study it? And when they admitted, they should have said, yes, we did, but we can't release the results because it would jeopardize public safety. That's what they should have said. But they made a mistake there and they said, no, we just didn't do it. And that's when my heart really sank. I think all of us that kind of go through this process that we've all been through, I know, when you realize it really is worse than you ever thought, and maybe even worse than you even think now. And your heart basically sinks to your pit of your stomach. And that's when basically I pretty much it was kind of a doomed to have to be involved because of my living there, having the dust samples, being an architect, being an engineer. You have a responsibility as an architect or an engineer. You've got to, it's public safety is one of the biggest nightmares you have. I mean, I had a lot of nightmares worried about light fixtures falling on people on Fifth Avenue, if they weren't mounted correctly, and during the middle of Christmas, and you have to say when you have to really take responsibility for design and get it so that it doesn't hurt people. It's part of your obligation to respect the public safety, and therefore also if there's a big lie and a huge lie, obvious on its face lie in that regard, it's as serious as 9/11 was, and I can't think of anything more serious that's ever happened in the world. Uh, well, you're an architect, you have to do something about it. You can't just not. And then I was single, I didn't have kids, and so my risks are much less than a person with a family having to go out there. So I got involved, and so this show. So yeah, I'll start the show now, the slideshow. Um, Let me start from the beginning.
Oh,
Uh,
your skateboard.
yeah, I'll get to the beginning here. Wait a minute, hold on. From the beginning. All right, so there's my little disclaimer. It's pretty much the same thing as yours. Um, and so I'll read it quickly. The following presentation is intended as fact, speculation, or fiction. However, it is the responsibility and liability of the viewer as to any determination or interpretation therein as pertaining to the truthfulness of this presentation, and it is not to be represented in any form. Okay, let's move on.
However, we are recording. Is that a problem?
Good. Yeah, in fact, yeah, and I agree to be recorded. So
Okay.
I call this presentation the Overton Rabbit Hole, living outside the Overton Rabbit Hole. And it's because basically, the Overton window and is the politicians' favorite view on why they won't touch certain topics. Well, we're actually not even above ground. The society was born. I was born in the rabbit hole, is what I've come to the conclusion. So 9/11 was on the surface. You was shown it from the TV, and they said, "Well, yeah, don't go out the rabbit hole. You don't want to check out the evidence, you, because we don't. You don't need to. We're telling you what happened." Well, I went out the rabbit hole on 9/11 and other things, and it taught me how to go, and you guys all taught me how to go in and out of the rabbit hole so I could discover more, but then get out, find my way out. We get trapped, society and the media traps us into, our mindset, and that's the Overton window mindset. So the Overton rabbit hole is what, I think we all need to get outside of. And GoFundMe.com, Twin Towers Forever. If you search that, that's a way if you want to contribute to 9/11 Truth my way. So here's a quote that supposedly maybe not have been by George Orwell, but it's, if you do not act, you will be acted upon.
Mm.
Of course, here is our dilemma as an activist when you first realize that. When my heart sank to my pit of my stomach, it's like, I'm okay, all of a sudden you're on this tightrope wire in between the Twin Towers. You're looking down below you, and it's a very precarious idea to be able to step up there and begin to be an activist on 9/11 Truth when everything below you is completely against you. And so you pretty much have to, at that point in time, decide, wow, is this really going to be as amazing as I hope? And I say amazing because, unfortunately, because of 9/11, and of course, my whole entire life, I was born right after Kennedy was assassinated. We've lived, to be honest and straightforward, it's really a life of tragedy we're living. It's a world of tragedy. And so I can get up in the morning. I don't want to be, so depressed. Oh, you've got this life to live and it's full of this pain and despair. Well, that is no real life either. You do have to feel it, though. You got to realize that is what it's about. And so what can you do to make it a positive thing? Well, you can appreciate it for what it was. You can, and then you can make sure it doesn't happen again. And then you can use it in the opposite way they use it. You can use it for a benefit rather than for some kind of a furthering of an agenda. Okay, so I'll keep moving on here. And in here, in a time of universal deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act. That's also George Orwell. So here we get an activist. This is when you've decided to go on that tightrope, and you do then realize, well, I could be, arrested. And then this is one of the quotes that really formed my way I go through life and everything I think about in terms of what the society is like. And it's from Frederic Bastiat. You'll see his name. He's a lawyer from the 1800s in France, very famous. Let me go back to that real quick. So when plunder becomes a way of life for a group of men living together in a society, they, over the course of time, create a legal system that authorizes it. We all know what that means.
Mhm.
It means you don't have authority to bring a lawsuit if you're one of the victims, direct victims. It authorizes it, and it produces a moral code which glorifies it. So that's what I think we are into. This statement phrase, I think sums up the continuing dilemma. I always like to say 9/11 is a false flag event. It's not, it was. It's still with us today. Those mechanisms that were put in place that day that are driving the machinery. A lot of the people are still alive that profited by it, that benefit by it. And it basically can be described as the Hegelian dialectic is what they were doing. A false flag, of course, a debt-based fiat economy. So we're in this kind of world. This is the tragic world. We're driven. Our economy is driven by these events. and it gets funneled into these avenues that we are not able to control. They control vis-a-vis this Hegelian dialectic, false flag, debt-based fiat economy, the money, the bad money. So that's what everything is based on. I'm going to keep moving here now. So here's another description of the Hegelian dialectic. It's centralization of power, thesis, antithesis, synthesis. I think we're all here familiar with that. One of the first things I did as an activist too was, even before the 9/11 stuff, was I was getting into the memes. I was making my own memes and into political satire. So this is right. I came up with this one. I made this meme, and it was in the, just before what was 2016, actually, the election. It was one of my favorite ones, but it was also one of the ones that I realized, I was being shadow banned. I had this on Facebook. Once that news started to come out, like, oh, there's going to be some control of censorship of people on Facebook with shadow banning and other methods. And when this was one of the first memes I came up with and was thoroughly appreciated and then quickly banned. And it did, but they didn't even tell me it was banned. It just disappeared. So that's what got me kind of away from social media. Anyway, I got into these political cartoons. I like this one a lot. I hope you're seeing the whole thing. This is not so much of a cartoon, but basically all the wars that these presidents profited by and caused. Here we have Hillary Clinton on the campaign trail. Okay, so at about pretty early on too, I got into this idea that, well, most of the people I knew that were in the truth movement were not quite hardcore enough for me. I can tell you that I had a couple of experiences trying to get the information out of some of these leaders at the truth various movements, and, well, what do you want? What's our objective? And to this day, we still don't get some very strong answers to that. I don't believe it's, well, we were lied to. And it's like, well, I know, but don't we want more? Don't we know more? I had some people in the movement, top of the movement, saying, well, I said, sorry, what do we want in the end of the day? What's our goal? To get George Bush thrown in jail, to get him hung, killed? What we want? Their children to be, prosecuted? What's going to happen? The CIA is going to be abolished? What is it? And I got some answers. That one of them said, well, no, we just like maybe like a paragraph on the inside pages of the newspaper of the New York Times. And I was like thinking to myself, you really, all we want is a paragraph on the third page of the New York Times? At that point, I realized, well, okay, I was tired of a lot of different things, not being aggressive enough in the movement. And so I said, okay, we're going to do, my thing is going to be TTV, Truth Towers Volunteers. It has a few meanings, and it's going to be hardcore. It's not violence in any way, but it's going to be about knowing what we want, and it's appreciation. Again, I don't want to be depressed all the time. We're going to have this an opportunity. I want to have a positive message. In tragedy, we find appreciation. And if it's not hard to do, then it's not worth doing. So that's another reason I've kept going with this. I think Isaac Newton was the first one who did that. Of course, here, of course, you have Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who was saying some very important things, as you know. Here's Aldous Huxley, who also had some important things to say. This is a sketch I did of my first ideas about how the whole infrastructure of the Freemason network worked. Some political, cartoons of the elites controlling the political environment. Ludwig von Mises is very important to me here, and Frank Zappa. I thought, Frank Zappa comes up, and he's been, a guy that I respect. Here, of course, is J.R. Tolkien, an anarchist. I guess some of that got cut off. I'm sure I got to reduce some of these slides. Here's a thing about the media. Let's just turn it off. 9/11. It's the biggest mistake the elites ever made. I feel like that's a good statement. They really did set up the watershed moment that we can all look to hold them to account. Here's Bush. You're either with us or you're with the truth movement. This was the We Are Truth movement. Here's Zelikow, of course. And a lot of these memes were made by architects and engineers. Here's one. I'll stop it real quick here. This is one I've come up with over recently, but it's basically when people ask, well, who would you speculate as to who the people were involved? Based on me looking at how the towers, I think, were taken down, it started very early in the process. And politically at that time, the trilateral group was formed at the same time the towers were being topped out around the early 1970s. This was a group that David Rockefeller founded, and one of his top people in it was Henry Kissinger. George Bush is a member. Now, the guy on the right, I'm not sure he was a member, but that's um, 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 Menachem Begin. Now, Menachem Begin is there, and they're looking to him because he was the one that actually did the first false flag events in Israel to make it look as if Arabs were involved in all this terrorism. He began using the Mossad, and I believe it was he as well that came up with the statement that Mossad shall do war through deception. I believe that was Menachem Begin who came up with that expression. But anyway, he was one of the very first real terrorists that used deception, the false flag way. So those guys, I think, started it. Here's where the Twin Towers are trying to get back at everybody. Large media surfaces. Here's the thing, Mark Twain talks about, it's what you know that just ain't so, that's the problem. So here I've got the consequences. That this is the thing about hardcore truth. So we have consequences, obviously, and they're ongoing. It is an inside job. So what I want is evolution of Homo sapiens. Basically, it's not even Americans or modern, people, but just Homo sapiens need evolution, restitution, and reparations. And so those are the things I want. I'm going to go on again here. Come on. Okay, so here's a good graphic that came up. I think architects and engineers came up with this one, but it's more detailed to what the consequences were. We all know what those were, so I won't go back to it. But here's where I first started getting into the idea that the towers were so important. I know Susan thinks maybe they're not as important, but I think they're the thing that makes it, to me, a watershed event that people remember is the towers, not so much the Pentagon or the other things. And not World Trade Center 7. So I started to get into, as an architect, having to represent scale model representations of the towers, getting them in people's faces. So back to the appreciation aspect of this evolution, it turns out for me, it's always about conservation, preservation, restoration, and rehabilitation. So that's going to filter right on through with 9/11 consequences in terms of the restitution. And here are the specifics. So now, what do I mean specifically? Okay, rebuild and repurpose the Twin Towers. They shouldn't be money laundering towers. Dismantle and recycle the slavery tower. You recycle, you don't blow it up. Repurpose and rename the 9/11 Museum to the 9/11 Museum of Truth and Lies, because I think we're not going to be able to erase, and then we shouldn't erase the big lie that's been put on us. It should be preserved. It'll be an obvious contradiction. So what's going to happen, I hope, is that the truth movement, the truth museum, encircles the existing Museum of Lies, and they basically keep it intact. It's like, can you believe they actually did that? They actually had this Museum of Lies, and of course, then the Truth Museum is going to be around it. So that number one point is very important. They're not necessarily in order here, but that first point, those are the important things. 2, redevelop the Pentagon. Well, okay, you want to repurpose and rename it and introduce the St. Louis Arch, and potentially, I think it's a good idea, over the site as a protecting element, and small scale Twin Towers in that courtyard in the middle, and all for the purpose of as a final war memorial for all the wars and a museum of truth, a truth for all the wars, not just for 9/11 truth. And then, of course, restore the internet. Those are some obvious things there. And then the monetary and currency reform that has to do with this Hegelian dialectic, false flag, debt-based economy. We need a new currency in order to do that. It can't be a fiat currency. So here you have an example of a photograph of that, how that memorial might look in the future, the war memorial, war peace, the final war and truth memorial. And here's me beginning now. I'm getting into TAP, which is just beginning. This is in the early 2017. And we used to go around and get these petitions here. This one is from a Polly Holiday. She's a famous actress. She was on, Mel's Diner. She was the woman that said, "Kiss my grits." So I ran into Polly Holiday, and she was very much into 9/11 truth. She wanted to help out. We lost this petition. I just found it the other day because I photographed it. So I never got back in touch with her. She was one of these people when Ed Asner was alive, who would have known Ed Asner. Anyway, we were handing out these petitions. You guys maybe remember these, getting them signed. And here's us just in 2017, Mike Santangelo, Les Jameson, Sandra Hicks, myself. Here's Sander. Here's Henry Platsky, a real socialist communist. There's Albert Lucentis, myself. Here's Cat Waters, who I've been told is a plant. I can't remember the woman's name on the right. She was often there. Here's the kids. The kids have been really into my hat. I was wearing that Empire State hat and all the Twin Towers stuff they're really into. Here's a flyer that was based on TAP that I think 9/11 can be made much more succinct. I know you guys put together the 12-page nice review for the the fire with the firefighters, but I really felt it should have been the one-page thing that Trump is more interested in, and I think it can be done that way. Here's just addressing the speed of which the collapse happened, which is the main thing. And then, of course, we have video evidence. We have the scientific dust samples, and those are the three. And the speed, the video, and senses. Your smell, touch, taste, those things. People that were on site, New Yorkers. That evidence is extremely important. So, and then of course, all the photographs and all the videos, you can't all doctor 40,000 photographs and videos, and they all show the same thing. So that's all you need to show anybody to prove that, yeah, there's a problem with the official story, big problems. And so that's what I was handing out. And then we got this 2017. This is when I met Gene Laratonda, by the way. And there he is on the left. The guy with the mustache, handlebar mustache, was a guy with dust samples. You saw, Barbara Honegger. Here's the first exhibition of my Twin Towers, the large 12-foot tall scale models that had people inside them. I thought that was a good idea, and it actually was a good idea. It was like my spruce goose, because I only got them out about 8 times. But because if there was ever any wind, you really got kind of basically blown over, literally. So putting people in the Twin Towers, it was really a great idea. It worked out really great when we did do it. People would come up and talk to you. They would hold your hand and pray with you. And just seeing people inside them, it's like, hey, there were people in there. It also made me think of silent movie. Aggravated manicide, I think, is a good name to describe the crime, how serious it was. Here was a photo I put together of Kennedy, lawyers for 9/11 inquiry. This came out in 2018, early, when we were getting ready to submit the petition. Here's us submitting the petition down in New York City not at the courthouse, but at the can't remember the name of the building, but here's Julio, the lawyer at the time, who had to present it because Nick Harrison was delayed on his flight. His flight got delayed. Here's Bob McIlvaine, obviously, Sandra Hicks, Les. Of course, we have Wayne Costi over there. We have Joe Friendly, and why am I forgetting our main lawyer's name? That is a good friend of mine. I'm forgetting right now for some reason, but we all know them. And then, of course, here's Dusty. She's going to be on. Was she going to be on next week? Maybe not. I didn't see her name, but
Yes.
yeah. Oh, good. So I won't talk too much about her. Let her talk about herself. And then here's George, her significant other friend. That him holding his hands up was him just getting ready to tell us how we were all crazy. And so it was on the day that we submitted that petition downtown. on the right of that screen was Bob McIlvaine, and he stepped out right at that point in time, and I went behind him to help him out. He couldn't stand it. Um, Dusty will probably talk about this, but uh, he he stepped out. He was disgusted. I went outside. We got him a cab, and he went home. Uh, this was him preaching to us about that. But it was right for us to go through that because he eventually did kind of come around, and we had some other big events with him, and of course the newspaper. And we got through to him eventually, but it started out we had to confront and be involved in some of that. And that's part of the way it goes. Here's a meme I did with Wizard of Oz stuff. But it was 9/11 is a false flag. Remember Dorothy?
Mhm.
Silent movie. I really want to do this. This is the last thing with those big twin towers, a 12-foot one with the people in them. I really want to do a silent movie of the day with Richard Gage, with all of us. And the silent movies are very powerful, and the captions that depict the day, and using those towers as a vehicle. You get dressed in the morning as if you're going to work, but you're one of the towers. You get given explosives. You're kind of wondering what's going on. Shifty people are walking around. Could be, I think, a very entertaining and very cutting. There's that famous First World War. A lot of those World War II silent movies were very powerful. If you ever watched those, so I want to do that as the final thing with these towers. Here's Rebecca Schmoyer, who is part of Boston 9/11 Truth too. She's in the back there. I'm in the front. This is at Union Square Park. So you see us. This is the thing. This is when they came up and started holding our hands to pray. Here's a digital representation. What I wanted to do, which was have other ones built and be in a place like Central Park. Here's a view of the iconic view of the real towers through Washington Square Park arch. We did, here's them at the March for Science. We did that a lot, the March for Science. And I had these towers there on a couple of occasions. As you can see, they get a lot of attention. Yeah, these height. Yeah, go right ahead. Thank you. Yeah, I'm sorry. I've got people are coming to look at the house here. So I told them I had to be here. But anyhow, so these towers got set up at Washington Square Park, and there, that was a big one with people inside and a lot of cops around watching it. Everybody was participating in the March of Science parade, got to see them, and there was the message I got eventually put on them. And you can see they're pretty nice. I like the way they came out, and they really do have they get a lot of attention.
Great photographs.
Thank you. Here's a flyer I set up for the lawyers committee. I believe you see the whole thing. And then this one I want to stop quickly because this is a group, We Are Change, and I think they had more impact in on the truth movement than any other group, even maybe more than AE 9/11. You see them holding AE paraphernalia there and boards, and they did use a lot of the AE boards, but they were out. We would go out, and they would go out. This is Scott Starr and Charles Mousselet. Mark Charles is on the left, Scott's on the right. Guy in the middle, I don't know. That was a passerby. But we would go out. They would go out. They went out for 8 years as part of the We Are Change movement down to Ground Zero. We're by the post office there. The new World Trade Center 7 is behind us. Every Saturday, from they would be there from 10 o'clock until 5 o'clock every Saturday. We didn't, and even in the winter sometimes, even when there was snow, they would be out there. I found out about them, and I started to get involved here about 2017, but they'd been doing it already 3 years. And I'm glad I got to see that. And Charles there on the right was about as good as you can get in terms of being able to talk to people and get people to stop and take pamphlets and explain the pamphlets. Charles had a voice like Gene Laratanda. He was like he could scream and scream and scream, and he would all day long, and he was great at it. Here's Charles, with a typical group of people and all the boards behind him.
I love the t-shirt with just simple question mark nine.
Yeah, and then 9/11, he that's his
Yeah,
shirt. He came up
that's
with that shirt.
that's
And
great.
then they retired, so we kind of got that ended up stopping those Saturdays. Um, and you can just see how he could engage people, and I would engage people, but they just wanted to talk to Charles, and I don't know, I'm sorry, to Scott Starr. And then here's Neil. I think if Gene's still on the call, he would remember that guy. Here's again Charles or Scott Starr in all his glory, waiting. Here's I wanted to get the towers down there. That's the corner, by the way. I'm going to stop real quick. That corner is the post office, U.S. Post Office. That's going to be our go-to spot for future truth, anniversaries. This is right down next to Ground Zero, and it's still on New York City Police territory, which means you can be there. The Port Authority kicks us off. But that stone wall will reflect sound. And now they've got this new big stone theater that's a huge wall off to the side. That'll reflect a megaphone all the way down to the main West Broadway frontage road that goes in front of the museum and in front of the memorial. So that's going to be a place for us to be next year and maybe hopefully into the future. That's been our go-to spot.
Great.
And here you see us Saturday. It's turning to be about 5 o'clock when the shadow came in. Um, and then here's in Greenwich Village when it got started with Dusty on her bus, and you see these kids. Their parents had their kids wanted to be taken with the towers. The kids love the towers, and I know about them. To this day, I get 2-year-olds, and so their parents are telling them about the towers. This was 9/11 2018. I decided to be up there at the Greenwich Village location where Dusty was with the bus and where we had the Jefferson Market event. And so there's Mike Santangelo, and there's some people in the neighborhood hanging out by the towers asking us questions. Here's the Jefferson Market flyer, Jefferson Market Public Library flyer. And there, of course, is Gene and Ellen, uh, Ellen Fritz, I think is his first name or last name. Of course, there's Deb, Mike Santangelo, myself, Les, on that same 2018 event. This guy is Charles. Didn't remember his last name, but he's very well known. My Gene will know him. He was always there on the anniversaries and on those Saturdays. Here's the towers again at the Greenwich Village event. Here's the bus. Pause real quick. This is Dusty's bus once we finally got it there, and my towers. So I had we'd been dreaming to get that thing, and here's the together, and we did get it together a few times. There's the tile wall behind her, which Tiles for America was how she was using to keep 9/11 in the forefront. She was not one of the hardcore truthers. She did not want to confront 9/11 the day, but she did want to keep it alive, and that has helped. And of course, with Westview News, she was more aggressive. She was more of a hardcore truther. Here's when I started to realize I had to figure out a way to get him to pull him around, and that was on the skateboard that I ended up coming up with. It was a cart to pull those things around, and that worked for a while. That helped me a lot because I didn't have to rely on Sandra Hicks's van or anybody else's van. So I was able to go around the city. I could put them like that and then set them up. And here they got set up at Sheep's Meadow in Central Park, where it was the closest I've ever been to being arrested. Was when they came and surrounded me from 5 directions, and I had to take them down. But I had a great saying. I said to them, I won't say it now because we should move on, I think. Well, I'm going to stop real quick. You see the kid looking at him, but the saying when the police came and they said, well, what are you doing? And I said, well, it's about the towers. I said, look, we know, I said, I'm tired, and we all are tired. I said, you're tired. We're all tired of the towers being remembered for 9/11, for that day, and for the wars that, have been, that we needed, that had to be brought or that were brought. And, and the towers are remembered for that day, 9/11. I said, we New Yorkers, we want to remember the towers when they were in their glory, when they were the iconic structures that really made New York what New York was in a lot of people's view. And we want to remember them for that. So I said, whatever you believe about the truth about what happened on 9/11, I said, we want to remember the towers. So that's what got me off the hook. They said, okay, you got to take them down. You have to have a permit for that. But, we're going to let you go. And I could tell that got to them. They said, yeah, that's the way we feel too. We want to remember them. Why not? So that's, and then there's some random guy came up. He was not some kind of infiltrator, but he was helping me. He wanted to keep being involved and stuff. So but a lot of people, of course, saw these, and this was in Sheep's Meadow. And then it was right after that one, that photo that I got taken. Here I'm at Madison Square Park with them on the cart. This is when one of the first windy days when I realized, I can't really always do this, especially if I'm alone, even with the skateboard underneath it, pulling it around, because they blow over too easily if there's any kind of real wind. There's my little small ones. Here, I'll stop real quick, is Colorado, um, 9/11 truth. And these guys, you know who they are, of course. Fran, um, David, Marty. I don't know the woman in the middle, myself, and I don't know the guy on the right. But I was out in Colorado one other time, this time of the year, as I was saying, and we did. And I had my tin towers there above her head, and that's when I met David Chandler, by the way. And then they had their truth booth, which was great. You can see how good it was. And we got a lot of people with some fair, and we got a lot of people in there. There's that consequences banner that I
Mhm.
started with. Here's one of my t-shirts. I'm very big on the fashion apparel. Started getting into that around 2018, end of it. And some of these I produced, some of them I haven't produced, these t-shirts. Of course, jeans t-shirts are great. I've always been using those. Here was a more formal attire. I think we should go for that kind
Mhm.
of look at times. And here's 2018, the Lawyers Committee, front and center. This is after the petition was submitted, grand jury petition, and this was an event to raise money and bring awareness to what was going to go on, what was happening. We still hadn't heard back, if I remember correctly. This was 9/11, just before 9/11, 2019, excuse me, 2019. This was another flyer, and I did the flyer for that, and I did this flyer for them. This is when I was heavily in the movement, the Lawyers Committee. This is the crowd we got for that was really excellent. Here's the bagpipes we had, of course. Here's a benediction, and Chris Joya. This was his first debut in
Wow.
public, with Chris Joya. Bob again, David Meiswingle. Excuse me, I was thinking Bob. David Meiswingle, and here's Chris being very vocal as he is, which we love. And when the first time he was there, the towers are on the right, by the way. I brought those to that event. We've set them up. Um, Chris Joya again. Here we have Richard Gage. I'll stop on this one because there's a good picture of Richard in his glory here, really giving one of his typical great presentation with his enthusiasm. And we all know what he's saying there. He's saying, "No way! There's
Mhm.
no way those buildings could have come down that way." That's, of course, what he's saying there. Um, Here's Ansgar Schneider. Hope we can pick up on his work. He was the one that came up to refute that Bazant theory. And his it's a bit technical for people, but he does present it well. His presentation, it just kind of if you just go through it at the speed he presented it, it's like 15 minutes. It flies over your head if you're just a layperson, even me or even Richard. I'm sure if you're hearing that thing in the first 15 minutes, there's some things you have to slow down and clarify because it's quite technical, but they are easy to clarify. I think if you did it in 30 minutes with somebody like myself or Richard explaining what he's actually talking about in more layman terms, you could get through his presentation in 30 minutes, and it's very valuable. I think it's a very strong rebuttal of the Bazant. And of course, here's Mick Harrison at that event, our lead attorney at the time, talking about we haven't heard back. Um, and of course, Les, who was the narrator mainly, with his TAP T-shirt on, and 9/11 Justice is Coming. Here's Hamuk. I'm not pronouncing it correctly, but I think we all know him. He's done our AV work for so many years, during the critical times and tough times. And he was always a go-to person for AV stuff, Hamuk out of California. And here's Joya and David Meiswinkle and some other people, a couple lawyers, a few lawyers. David Meiswinkle again. I really love David Meiswinkle. He's got quite a history. Here's Bob. Bob McIlvaine tearing up as usual. And yeah, go right ahead. Go right ahead. I'm sorry, I'm in this presentation. I told them about it 2 weeks ago. They said we all set, and then sent me this thing. And I sent it back today. I said I can't do it. I'm going to be here anyway. So go ahead and go out there if you'd like. Just watch out for the screen. You got to slide it. Apologize for that. Got people coming by, but I guess they're going to get a little introduction to 9/11 truth here on the side. So here's, we'll keep moving. Bob McIlvaine. Oh, Gary Null. He's great. Gary Null. A lot of people thought he was over the top. He's a hardcore truther. He definitely was. See him pointing fingers at everybody. A lot of people got upset about what he said at that event, and I loved it. It was all about natural health. A lot of it was about the health system. He took it all the way to that, just all the lies with the elites.
Mm.
And here is now I'm forgetting David Crispin Miller, as we all know, who has really suffered from Lyme's disease, and he's a good friend of mine. I see him in the park with the skateboard. He's very powerful as well, very tough. He does not get into the Israeli line too much. I think he believes that, of course, they were involved, but he doesn't think they were a big part of it. He really believes it was CIA and U.S. government. I would tend to agree with him that they were the main drivers. We know that the Israelis were involved in some ways, but I do think it was, really the responsibility on our side for most of the real tragic things. The beginning, I should say, the initial things. Here's Mark again. I can't remember. I don't remember who this woman was. I think a CIA or somebody, maybe somebody knows who it was. She gave us a nice video. Here are finally this is the last event where I took the 12-foot towers out to ground zero on 2019. This was just shortly, a couple days after that lawyers committee. And I got them set up. This was a beautiful time. It was a beautiful weather. I was very pleased with how the skateboard thing was working. And on this day, I was actually very encouraged. I thought, they're going to be able to make it through wind because it was a bit windy. So they were on that skateboard. They were actually doing very well in the wind. I didn't have people in them. I said, I just can't have people in them if it's windy. They'll be fine. And I went away and went and talked to Jean Laratonda. Here's Fern, by the way. Fern Tishman, the most active activist. She's got to get that lifetime award. We've got to give it to her. I'm telling you, back to her. Yeah, Fern there, her back is to us, but I think we all know who she is. She's pretty annoying. She sends out a lot of emails, but but she's the most active activist. I've really appreciated her over the years. She's still going. She's about 95 now.
Oh my.
She's still sending out emails, about 4 or 5 a weekend at least. Here's
Wow.
9/11 Truth Hardcore again. Why am I showing that slide? Because me going out and having these towers wherever you're out in public, you got to be wearing the shirt or bring these towers. I used to send them on bars or on the table at a restaurant. Here's when I started realizing I'm not going to ride the skateboard. In fact, the reason, and here's when we get starting into COVID when I was in Brazil, but I had to stop at the towers because they actually blew over that day. I was over talking to Gene and I got a wind gust and those things came down. I was not around them because I had too much. I was overconfident.
Mm.
And after that, I said, you know what? I was getting older anyway, too. So I'll set them up again for that silent movie if we ever get to that. But so here we come with COVID time. And you know how that changed us all. And I was heavily in the COVID as part of 9/11 group, which broke the TAP New York group up completely because Sandra Hicks and Henry Pulaski were just totally they totally bowed down to the authoritarians again, based on COVID, based on the fact they believed it. They didn't think it was a false flag. And that broke us up. And, good riddance, I would say, if that's going to break you up. Here's a me in the supermarket with that flag on. Here's a meme I did at that time, which I liked, At that time, we were being censored, as you know, online. So you had to come up with code names about it. If you wanted to talk about 9/11, you didn't say 9/11. You wanted to talk about COVID, you didn't say COVID-19. Especially nowadays with the AI, you immediately get shadow banned or canceled, or it gets stopped. So I came up with these nicknames. No Kid 19 was about the Jeffrey Epstein, which came out at that time. And of course, No Bid 19 2021 is all about the virus. Get Rid 01 is, of course, 9/11. The elephant in the living room. So anyway, monetary and currency reform. Okay. At the same, about that time, just after the COVID, I'm talking about monetary reform. And so I got into this thing with the movement about money, that we need a new money. We can't have US dollar, $100 bills. We've got to have a sound currency again. Is it gold? Is it silver? Well, maybe, but I mean, this is, and here's, our current system, infinity dollar, and that's Kashkari. Here's the Hegelian dialectic again, but it's talking more specifically about money. Here's what the solution I came up with, which is what I think was money in indigenous times, when the indigenous peoples, were running the continent. There's a lot of evidence that shows that they were using biochar. If you look that up, which is basically charcoal, but a very clean form of charcoal. It's a perfect kind of sound money. I won't get into the details because I think I'm probably running long here. But I came up with this Muir's own, like Newman's own, salad dressing, but Muir's own permagold coins, or carbon, charcoal, and made that bag. It was kind of a pretty bag, and the rainbow is the rainbow. There's gold at the end of the rainbow. And here was a little blurb about what that's about. I dedicated a certain amount of the biochar, which went into this graviola tree, which is a very soursop in the United States, very valuable tree for medicinal purposes as well as just the fruit. And so I donated some Bitcoin to all the different truth groups that was going to be planted in this tree. It's like a permanent legacy type of way of having currency actually be in the ground and stay in the ground, like gold, for example. But it's giving its benefit because it's a great fertilizer and it doesn't corrode. It's going to be around hundreds of thousands of years. This charcoal is. So now that tree is like 15 feet high. Here's a little blurb I did on that. I was going to take that out. But anyway, here is the symbol for that big coin, I call it now, big coin. And then here's another meme, that was just about all the coincidence with all the US dollar problems around the world and leaders who didn't abide by it. Jodie Foster made some great comments. I didn't realize until I looked back, when I was putting this together. Here's a graphic I put together that I want to put on a t-shirt or something. It's multicolored, but it shows the planes, And this is when I started to really get into the skateboard. Really became my way to get exercise and could get out every day. Here was a 9/11 2020. This is 2021, I believe, or maybe 22. I can't remember. COVID, it's hard to remember what time it was. It was after the main thing of COVID, but you see the masks. Everybody's still wearing the masks. Not me. These guys were Navy officers that were in town, and they were standing around the board because they were just in love with the board. And I had all my stickers on there. They knew it, and there's of course the Twin Towers on there. They were just all about compliments and loving it, love, love, love. Here's an Italian journalist of TikTok who did a nice big interview with me on that 2022 and 2020. I think it was 2020. This just after it was September, just after COVID, it was hot, and she did a nice interview with me. It was really good. And these guys were loving it. And I love that they got to see the skateboard. Here's me. This mark is still in the wall. If anybody wants to talk about, well, did a plane hit? That mark is there. And it was shown to me by a guy who I saw standing in his leather jacket, his motorcycle jacket on one of these anniversaries. And I've seen him before, and he stands there every time. And I said, what are you doing here? And he goes, well, see that mark up there? He said, I was standing right under that mark when the second plane hit.
Wow.
And that is a piece of we think it was a landing gear or the aileron, part of the structural system of the wings that actually hit the building. And you see the trajectories. There's some scratches, and those gashes are the exact right trajectory for a parabolic object of a considerable weight coming from that, from World Trade Center 2 that would have hit there. So he said, and that thing hit, he said, I was there when the plane hit and it hit the ground. He said, I ran. Once that plane hit, I ran. He said, but when I came back, it was laying there and he saw the mark and he said, that mark's still there. I come here, stand here at this spot every 9/11 anniversary. And they've repaired that facade, but they've left that gash. So there's some respect for the truth there because they left the gash there. It's by the subway. Here's us. You got Gene La Rotonda, a few of the other people from Florida that are there. You got Charles there. You got Ziggy, I think is his name. You got all these people. You got all of Gene's signs that he did are there. This was the group from 2020, and none of us are wearing masks, and so that and this was at the end of the day. And here's me being happy about there's where I was on, getting pictures. And this is a 500-mile celebration. I passed 500 miles. And here's me getting more into it as I get older and getting in better shape, I think. Putting trees on the top and water is part of the evolution and part of the rebuilding the towers with repurposing them. Shoes, big time. The kids love the shoes.
Hmm.
And I love the shoes. They're very comfortable. They work great. People love the shoe. Kids love the shoes, sometimes more than the skateboard. I have a lot of different messages you can put on the shoes. Here's us, 2022. I took these photos for the lawyers committee, for Barbara, for Les Jameson. I'll pause it real quick. This was flying up the Hudson River. So that was right over ground zero. And it was as amazing as that. Some of these photos, I took the same shot of the plane and spliced it in, but the plane actually did go in all these spots. And this one, I think, is the actual photo. I took it out and spliced that in some other areas, but the other areas where I've spliced it here, it actually went by there. You're looking at the Jersey coast over there from the Battery Park City. And here you got it. It flew right past, and you had the Empire or the Statue of Liberty back there and Ellis Island.
Right.
And so, and here's me, in the skateboard world. Now there's a big race called the Broadway Bomb, which I'm in every year now. And it's a real great one to get, around all the young kids again, because they're into it. Now they're into 9/11 truth. They don't talk. Okay, stop and make this point. They do not talk about the Pentagon. They do not talk about Judy Woods. They talk about bombs in the basement. They talk about the towers. They talk about World Trade Center 7. They don't talk about the Pentagon. They don't talk about Shanksville. I haven't had one of these younger people bring up either any of those things. I do have people that are my age and our age bringing up things like Judy Wood, bringing up things like the Pentagon. Generally, though, I've never had anybody bring up the Pentagon, surprisingly, because I hate this, if they're going to bring up, like, did a plane hit or was there no plane? When people bring up the Pentagon, they have said it's about the money. It's about that Rumsfeld conference, press conference the day before about the missing 3 trillion, 2.5 trillion, or whatever he said. They talk about that when they talk about the Pentagon. So, but it's the Judy Woods people. Unfortunately, they're talking about that. Some of the older people, the younger people know. But so here we are celebrating. We all got down from the 13-mile race. We got to the finish line. Here's baked in the cake. Okay, I'm quickly going to go. I think I know how they took the towers down. Okay, I did a little 4-page quick thing on it, and some of you got that. It's basically deals mostly, well, it deals with the whole thing, and here's a little clue. Okay, so the bottom line is I've got stacks and stacks and stacks of scientific papers and different proofs that could be put together and compiled in a report. But that would take a lot of time and a lot of money to do. I get plagiarized over the years. I don't mind that. But when you get plagiarized in New York City, you get paid for it, at least. Maybe not what you deserve, but you get paid. So fine, plagiarize it. Anyway, I don't want to put forth everything with it unless, hey, maybe we should be putting some money into it. And you have to have so much time. You really should pay somebody to come together with this sort of thing. And if it's Richard Gage, it's Richard Gage. If it's Jonathan Cole, Jonathan Cole. And maybe it's not this. I think this is how it was done, but maybe it's not exactly. But it certainly is worlds away from Judy Woods or those kind of people that don't have a construction background. And Judy Woods, for example, it's all anecdotal. And frankly, I'm not impressed with the people with the construction backgrounds. They haven't taken it that far. Here's a clue. I give clues on this stuff. This is showing the World Trade Center with the lights obviously lit up. Now, what that means to me when I'm looking at that is, wow, that is the largest ever in the history of the world to this day, energy watts per square foot of ground floor area of any building, energy density, in other words, electrical energy density of any buildings that have ever been built then or to date, to this day.
Mm.
Let me ask you, can you maybe harness that electrical energy in a way that could promote the explosives to be detonated and or exaggerated? So it's a big clue. Those buildings, you could pump them full of a lot of watts, a lot of electricity. Okay, that's the clue. That's as far as I'll go.
Mm.
Here is the corruption of the World Trade Center. These are some of the public relations photos that were taken in the early 70s. This is in the World Trade Center, some of the offices. And as you see, they're very proud to show the Swiss bank. You can open up a Swiss bank account at that time from the United States, from a counter. And Swiss bank account, we all know what that means. It's money laundering. And at that time as well, you had $10,000 bills. They used to print $10,000 bills, $5,000 bills. What that means is that guy's bag right there, he's opening up a Swiss bank account. It can be full of $50 million. It's that small of a bag. This is at the time when you were running guns to Cambodia, a lot of gun running going on in the Vietnam War. And if you're going to be wanting to launder that money and you're in New York City, go to the Swiss bank there at the World Trade Center. It's just one of many examples of how the towers were used in bad ways over their life. Here, they're in the bank, the office of the higher up. Here's your person you can trust that's really in the top levels of the Illuminati in the Swiss bank. It's going to take care of you and loves to see that drug money come in. Okay, so here's a shot of that same period where it shows how cables were taken into the elevator, when the buildings were open. I bring that up because it shows how, yes, you could bring a thing like a cable into the building relatively easily and take it into the main elevator shaft and use it as a detonation cable the way I believe it was done, or may have been done. But it just shows you how, well, that's possible. You could bring a cable into the building to go all the way up the elevator shaft. Here's a proof that they've done that. They had to do it when they put the elevators in. So Dignify Ground Zero, this was a project in 2023. And it was based on the fact that I was going around and here, is the beginning of that September 11th, 2023, a Hindu dancer right close to Ground Zero, very loud Hindu music. It was beautiful. It was all about, it was at 8 o'clock in the morning when the first plane hit that they did this dance. The live music was off to the side there. It was beautiful. And I was on the skateboard and it was just an amazing thing. I thought, well, we got to do that for the 25th anniversary. Why not get some cultural dancing going on? Why don't we hire some dancers, have some music? Unfortunately, the firefighters and the police officers are just down the street from that. And at the Canal Street, where there's a police station, a lot of those guys who were doing a ceremony at the time too. I passed them and they saw me with my shirt. They came, one of the sergeant police officers came and they made them stop because the Hindu music is not Muslim music. It's not Arabic music. It's Hindu. It's not the same music, but there is that chanting and the calling. And so it sounds similar in some people's ear to a, Muslim music. And the firefighter sergeant was like, you really got to stop. They were fortunately near the end of their performance anyway. But that was telling as how, how far have we come? We haven't come that far. This was 2000, again, 23. So this is as I was setting out on that day in one of Gene's t-shirts.
Hmm.
Um, Here's the project is Dignified Ground Zero. As you see here, we're at John O'Neill at the bottom there. We know who that was, the FBI agent. And you see, blue delphinium is those long, stocky flowers, that smaller blue flower. That's the blue delphinium, which is a symbol of truth. So you won't see any blue delphinium down there, except for the ones I put there, or anybody that wants to be part of this, which is we put them in the names of the people that are part of the truth movement, or the people that have survivors part of the truth movement, as an expression of there is a difference here, and that is that this is a complete desecration. What's going on, this truth that you're mourning here is a desecration. And so we will symbolize the real truth with the truth flower, the blue delphinium, and you'll know who those people are when you see blue delphinium. Here's Robert McIlvaine at the top. Um, Next to him, very much in the diagonal, very close, within 2 feet, is on the left, you see there Jeffrey Thomas Campbell. That's Campbell, UK Campbell, Jeffrey Campbell, and Robert McIlvaine on the left. And you see the blue delphinium there that I placed in. Those two, interestingly enough, at the memorial, it says they placed the names together of people that were together when the planes hit. So in meetings or in a conference that they were supposed to be together. What it tells me is that we know that McIlvaine was down in the down on the ground floor, and we know Campbell was up already up in the meeting. They were probably to be at the same conference. That conference that Campbell was in, I bet McIlvaine's son was supposed to be in that same conference, and was either late or maybe Jeffrey Campbell was early. But their names are right next to each other. All those people grouped together should have been in the same event, and I'll verify that with here's McIlvaine up close with the blue delphinium.
Mm.
This is again 2023. McIlvaine and Jeffrey again. Jeffrey Campbell only with the blue delphinium um, again. And now we're at my friend. If you see there's at the top, there's a blue delphinium. It's Brian Cummins. He's a good friend of mine, and he was Cantor Fitzgerald, probably more on the guilty side, if I had to guess, in terms of just the stuff that he was involved with. As a good person, really though. But a lot of these guys at Cantor Fitzgerald were into money laundering. I don't have any proof, but I imagine he would have been one of those types. He was a good guy though. Next to him on the left, there was a Beth Quigley. I didn't know who it was at the time. Found out later when I started to find out more about Brian's journey there. There is a picture of one of those pictures that shows people jumping or hanging out the windows on World Trade Center 1, Cantor Fitzgerald offices. And I did find one of those pictures. And one of those pictures is Brian. And the woman next to him is Beth Quigley. They were either boyfriend and girlfriend, or they just were close. It's hard for me to talk to the family about this, obviously, but they were close to each other. And they were in one, he was in one window, she was in the window next to him. I know because I know where they worked, and they didn't find Brian's body till like 8 months afterwards. But they found big pieces of him at the end of the cleanup. And what it means to me is Brian was one of the jumpers, I think. And there's another picture that shows me a jumper looks like Brian. And I can tell that picture up there on the 94th floor where he worked. And the woman next to him, it was Beth Quigley and Brian Cummins, my friend, I believe. Anyhow, here we're at Vincent Princiota. We know that's Joseph Princiota's nephew at the firefighters area. This was at a spot. I almost got arrested this day too, because the skateboard, I was getting attention from all these firefighters. They were loving it. All the young firefighters loved the skateboard. Not commenting on what the subject matter on the skateboard, but loving it, loving it. So, but nobody wants to really say. First responders are up there taking pictures and say, can we take a picture of you in the skateboard? First responders.
Wow.
So, that, what that means. That means they're definitely aware of what's, the message is, and they're on board. Subsequent to that, very shortly after that, Port Authority police come up. They say, hey, you know, you have to leave. We've been told, somebody's complaining about it. I wasn't saying anything. I didn't have a megaphone, obviously, or anything. Just standing there with my shirt on and with that skateboard. They got me because you can't take a skateboard to the memorial. You're not, but that's, of course, they don't want you riding it. I'm not riding the skateboard. But anyhow, I made a deal with them in the end. They said, all right, well, we know you come here a lot. And they said, and they said, well, we'll make a deal. You don't come here on 9/11 with the skateboard, but you can keep coming the days when you come. We'll let you do that, but we're not going to let you come on 9/11. I
mm,
looked at the board. I said, okay, deal. What I will do in the future, I haven't been able to get back on the last two anniversaries. I will go back with the Blue Delphinium. I will use the skateboard and go up and down the frontage road. That is on Port Authority territory, but it's not the memorial. It's the frontage road. Everybody goes by all over that road when they go to the memorial. I will ride that skateboard back and forth and get as many laps as I can and use that as a benchmark. And then I will stop it and I will take my flowers and I will go in there. And that'll be what I do. One of the things, that'll be probably the main thing I do on the 25th anniversary, which I do plan to be at. Hell or high water, I'll be there. And this was the final shot of a woman, the dancer, the Hindu dancer. This was her ending, the shame of it.
mm,
Here's another dancer. It was this year. This is all recent stuff. I'm getting closer to the end here. So that I ran into in Central Park. And I said, can I take pictures of you with the skateboard? She goes, yeah. So I got these. I said, okay, I'm going to take these pictures. I got these pictures of her. She doesn't realize it's like, you're on the skateboard. I showed her the pictures afterwards. She was fine with it. I said, you see, it's like you're riding a skateboard with the towers. I really like that. And then this shirt that I did that was based on Gene's graphic with my word, the humanicide. I think we need that new word. Here's a kind of a newer version of the shoes. I have a lot of versions of these shoes, by the way. Not all this style of shoe, different shoe styles. I'm trying to do some formal shoe wear that will have some simple 9/11 messages on it. Um, Showing that now because that's kind of what I'm doing right now. And then here's me in Central Park this year, just a month or two ago. It's really nice to be up there, get people walking by, and as I said, that's where I got the ballerina from the New York Met, the New York State Ballet. But here at Lincoln Center, anyway, here I'm going home and I'm going to go through Times Square, which is a real zoo now. I mean, one of the stories I took that skateboard, the most surreal dystopian thing that I'm sure will ever happen to me in my life was coming back to New York City in June of 2020. So people were still inside. You were not going outside. Most people were not going outside. I just like made the 1 week window where you could even fly to New York. And so I landed in June to New York. Streets are totally empty. I take the skateboard out. I go to Times Square in the middle of the day, and everything is on. All the screens are on, all the lights are on in the middle of the day, like they always would be. The television, ABC News is on, everything's on.
mm,
I skated from the bottom on 42nd Street up to the top 48th Street. I didn't pass one person there.
mm,
Times Square, middle of the day. I saw one cop in the distance. You could go, I think you could go out, but anyway, I was going out. You could go out, but there was nobody there. Dystopian. Anyway, here you see the little girl looking again. The little people see those towers, and she's looking at the towers. Trust me, it's not so much the board, although the board is, of course, another thing to look at. And here's a guy. I think I've got this photo right where you can see the guy on the upper left is looking straight at the board. Again, I got some of these photos screwed up at the beginning and they got chopped off. Here's me just this year getting ready to go. So I got 2,025 miles this year. And we're in the year 2025. It's been like a time machine this last century for me. That 1,900 miles up, it's like, hey, I'm going to kind of take a ceremony of some of these events that happened over the century as I passed landmarks. So the skateboard became, it's kind of like a time machine in this century for me. I passed my mother's birthday, and then I ended here, 2025 on my mom's death, and and it is 2025. She died 2024, and I thought to myself, I'm gonna reset the clock here because I don't want to be reaching that 2035 limit here when I've got to be thinking about myself going. And one of the reasons I did that is I was using it as a time machine. I got to 1985 miles and I realized, I've only got two more rides left. I've done like 400 rides. I've only got two more rides left. I'm going through basically the prime of my life towards the end of my life. And boy, did I realize just how really short the time is. And I said, I don't want to, I'm going to get up on this time when it's like the end. I don't want that to happen. So I'm going to take the time machine. We're going to take it back to some point in the past. I'm going to start over. And, but so I take it all out. This was a concert I went to. That's the point of showing this. You got to be out with these shirts every day and everywhere you go. Here's people up there. I think they're not chopped off. They're looking at the board. There's a woman looking over at the board at the towers. This is at a music conference. Another truth hardcore. Why? Because yeah. So I had grand jury duty. I love that Richard Gage is doing the grand jury series. I had grand jury duty. I said, I'm going in my shirts. They won't pick me. I was thinking that'll keep me from having to serve in the grand jury. I was in there with 200 people in this grand jury selection. I had to stand up. They called me. I stood up. I had my jeans shirt, the truth one, which, by the way, the cops and a lot of people commented on as I was coming in the building. Stood up in that grand jury. They called me to walk to the front. I walked just as slow as I could possibly walk, right? Another guy that was a good friend of mine that ended up being a good friend of mine who got called, he pretended like he was on The Price is Right because the announcer made it like, okay, this is the time to celebrate. You're being picked. And so he got picked and he went up like, oh, it's The Price is Right. His hands in the air running up there, happy. And I got picked and it was the opposite. I went really slow. I made sure the shirt was totally visible. You could hear a pin drop. Stood there before I sat down so all the people could, they got cameras on you, the judges on you. So they saw me standing up and then I sat down. Okay, fine. That day I didn't have a problem. That next day I wore this one I'm wearing today, the Investigate shirt, which is one of the ones that, anyway, um, it got started in 2006 with Alex Jones. And so people recognize that. And that's when you had 10,000 people on the street. So this one gets recognized for that movement. So I was in the jury selection, and there were some guys from some case about the terrorism needed to have the terrorism police in there. And the guy he goes, yeah, how many cameras do you have? Somebody asked him, or one of the people asked, how many cameras are there around the city that you guys are using? He said, well, we have more than 70,000. I was like,
Wow.
okay, 70,000. I mean, so that tells you, you're being watched, as we know, but it does solve a lot of crimes. Most of the videos, though, that solve the crimes are from private owners, property owners, are not these surveillance crimes because people are smart enough not to do stuff in front of the surveillance cameras. I said, okay, so this T-shirt, I got approached by the warden of the floor, came up and he said, "Can I speak to you?" I got taken outside the grand jury. Everybody knows me by then, and they're like, and he said, "You can't wear that shirt here. It's." And I said, "Why? Really? Why?" He goes, "Well, it's got, you can't advertise anything, and it's part of the movement." And then I realized, oh well, he's right because it did have websites on there. You can't. This is a tip to everybody. You can't show websites on a lot of these things. That's one of the things they get you on. So
Mm-hmm.
it did have the website on there. So I was like, okay, fine. He goes, and then he stopped himself because he said, and somebody complained. I think it was one of those terrorism guys that was testifying because I told my chest out for them, and he was talking about the terrorism efforts and everything. And so I think it was him that complained, but somebody complained. Anyway, so what did I do? Well, the next day I came back, I wore a different t-shirt and I wore the one without the website stuff on there. I thought, I wonder if I'm going to get into big trouble here. So I tried that. I didn't get into trouble. So I was like, okay, so I can wear truth. I was getting a lot of compliments from all these cops. And so none of the lawyers said anything to me, but I got a lot of compliments and I got away with it. Then I thought, okay, I'm bringing the skateboard. I'm riding the skateboard down and I'm going to have that sitting in the lobby. And
Oh.
I did that. And so I had a couple websites on the skateboard that I masked out with tape. And you can see I love the irony of the skateboard with the Twin Towers going through the explosives checking machine.
Hmm.
So apparently there were no explosives in the Twin Towers because it made it through the machine. But I got put the board through the machine. I love that. It was hard to get a picture because they don't want you taking pictures, but you see the cop there looking at the screen, making sure I had no explosives. Um, and of course, everybody saw it. This is the elevator he used to go straight up to all the rooms. So everybody has to go use that elevator. So it's sitting there next to the American flag and next to the trash can at times. But everybody started seeing that. And of course, I got tons of compliments and comments on it when I left. Here's the 2001 miles, the day of nine that I got the 2001 miles. That was on, back in August 30. I couldn't wait till the first anniversary. This day I was out. This was a different day actually, but here we are here's where I'm at Washington Square Park most of the time with the board, sitting, talking to everybody. Here's one of the bars that I go to afterwards to talk to young kids. And here's another one that I go to sometimes with the skateboard out like a horse out in front. Everybody loves. Um,
Hmm.
and okay, back now to this is the 20th, 2001 mile celebration day, going down to ground zero. And here I am parked in front of Robert McElvain and again Jeffrey Campbell. So I'm there a lot, and this was 2001 miles. And here is on the plaza there. And okay, so near the end here, redevelop the World Trade Center, rebuild them, dismantle it. This is the point number one. Repurpose and rename the Twin Towers, the museum. So the point is the Museum of Lies, the Museum of Truth and Lies. That's what it renamed as.
Hmm.
Here is the skateboard in front of the Museum of Lies, the current 9/11 Memorial Museum. Someday that board and those towers that I made, the tall ones, they'll be in the museum along with all your guys' work. The new Truth Museum. The measure now we're getting to where I'm building actual buildings. This will be quick. We'll get through. I'll be done here. I got that GoFundMe site, and I was able to get one contributor. I got $10,000 contribution, and some other ones from Richard Gage, some other smaller ones. So I was able to I'm getting these towers built on a site that's not in the United States, but I won't say where it is exactly. But they're going to be buildings, they're going to be mushroom spawn gardens. They'll be 30 feet tall. And this was the first concept I had back in 2003 when just right after 9/11 happened, when they were talking about the new World Trade Center was going to be built. I said, well, let's make them a little more deco, a little more like, deco and more kind of modernist. Yamasaki would not have liked these because he didn't like things like that flying cantilever arm. He didn't like little gimmicks like that. He was purely into structure, and I respect that. But I kind of liked a little bit more texture in there, a little bit more excitement. I like cantilevers. So this was my concept for it. Here's the modern one that I've got, which is more the proper use. This is Twin Towers rebuilt out of timber. Timber high rises are becoming a thing. So that's why they're that golden color, still using the play of light. They've got a water capture on top, it acts as a natural damper. They've got sequoia trees on the other tower. You've got a forest below. This is using the Twin Towers again in the proper way. Over the existing memorial, you don't have the Freedom Tower there any longer. Here is one of the proper uses, that tank at the top. It's a fish tank. It's a water capture tank. This is one I built. This is one of the biggest in the world that I've got down that I built. This is moringas, the miracle tree they call it. I won't give you more on that until maybe later, another time I go into this in more detail, because I'll be doing this, keep doing this. Here is, I'll stop here. Here's the foundation of those 30-foot towers going up. The key thing I'm showing here is that little red funnel that you see in the background. See, it's a lot of concrete you need to do this because you got to weight the bottom so they don't blow over in the wind. It's like a heavy base, and that's going to be a fish tank. It's going to be a tank of water with the towers coming out of them. But it had to be concrete. It's a lot of concrete. But the biggest thing, I don't believe global warming gases are the big issue. I think it's an issue, but it's a minor issue. The big issue is how we're killing the topsoil by covering it and just suffocating it with
Yep.
concrete. So it's this soil life that's like the future that we have to keep going. And you cut off these fungal networks that are in the soil that help all the pine trees and hardwood trees and everything else, the soil biodiversity. When you cut that network off, they do not necessarily keep going. And if you surround them with concrete, the concrete's there for 2,000 years and it's going to suffocate the land. And those networks are going to get killed. They continue for miles, they get chopped off. And those signals, those electrical signals go for miles. Who knows what those signals, we don't even know, of course, exactly all that those signals are conveying, all the information, all the uptake to the roots to stimulate root uptake. We don't even know. But we do notice that when we cover a thing with concrete, it kills the soil. So you see tubes in the concrete there. Those are breathing tubes. They're tall there because at some point in time there's going to be water. When the tank overflows, it'll flow into those tubes. When it's normally not overflowing, they're going to breathe oxygen. You don't need a lot of oxygen. I don't think. It's all part of an experimentation. You just got to give nature a little bit, and it'll recover or it will survive. So those tubes are breathing tubes. You can put them in a concrete slab and not compromise your strength. That's the key here. Example that I'm trying to show. Here's all the work it takes to going into that. A lot of it's on the computer. That book on the left is basically solid, at least half of it, with design sketches that you have to do and calculations, structural calculations, just the sketchy stuff. That's where most of the work takes place, the non-physical work. It's in that sketchbook. Then you got to take it and do a lot of work in the computer. Thankfully, you've got the computer. Here I've got, it's going to tell me how much concrete I need for each pour, all the stuff I'm doing. I know I'm running enough over on time, so I won't go into details, but here's, CAD drawings, steel reinforcement in there, the plumbing and all the air breathing tubes. Again, you got to have a very antiseptic environment um, uh, for mushroom spawn. It gets contaminated very easily. So you have to have very clean air. So there's nothing better, and it needs to be dark and cool, but not too cool. There's nothing better than a pair of concrete towers that are hollow and that are clean with controlled air supply and water can drain down them to be able to create mushroom spawn. And so I'll be thinking about what mushrooms should I have? And
Hmm.
I'll be talking to experts about that. I don't know much about it. Here's a drawing that I used for the computer that made these. This is what I'm taking with me the next trip I go down. This is the formwork that's going to be for the base. I've done the plinth base. Now I got to start working on the tower. So this is, as you can tell, probably this is the plastic formwork that's going to be used. It's going to form the base of the towers. They're very nicely detailed, done on the computer. So this will be out of concrete, but you're going to see that relief is that tower relief. That will continue all the way up the tower with some other formwork. You see at the top of that, there's some narrow strips. Those are the standard floors. But at the base, you've got that kind of decorative Muslim influence, that Arabic influence that Yamasaki loved so much. So here's the initial thing. Okay, now this is where you're digging into the ground. This is how it starts. From above, I've got a platform up there. You just start here, and you see that it's this sand. Didn't have the heart to cut down the tree, and it's in a good spot where the sculpture would have been, the Twin Towers. But you see that dark stuff is that money, that sound money, the biochar. That will be around, and that will be under that weight. It'll be compressed into the ground. It is a perfect benefit to soil. If it's dry, it helps with dry conditions. If it's wet, it helps with wet conditions. It's a huge home. It's like apartment complex for beneficial bacteria and fungal uh, uh, moisture and bacteria. And that's biochar. That's one of the reasons it's such good money because it's such a benefit to the soil. Here, I'm beginning to spread it out. It's going to be compressed under that slab. And now it has been spread out. You don't need much. You don't want it to dry out. So it's going to be under that slab soon. It will never dry out. It can dry out, but then I won't get into the details. But anyway, here is that biochar is going down. Then here's now I'm starting to lay things out, and it starts out pretty primitive. You've got, you're using lines and you're measuring with standard tools, and you've got markers and pencils and tape and scissors and plastic, and just that's how any project. They probably started the real towers. There was a part in time when they were using strings and things. It wasn't like 1970s to line things up. So you got to get your work point. So I'm starting using the frame, got the plastic down that needs to cover the soil for now. And I'm starting with my framework that's going to hold the steel in place. Now I've got to mark my work point. It's starting to go in. It's kind of difficult just starting from a natural scratch, and then you got to start laying it out. Now I'm leveling it out. These are the set out points, and the steel's starting to go in. Here you see the two towers start to come into shape, the footprints with some of the steel coming in. Here they're basically getting a lot of the steel in, and the two footprints of the towers going in. Here I've got kind of a lot of the steel. It's being held in place. All the steel that's in place, it's going to be there for when the first pour of concrete comes. And you can see, and it's all these are done by the calculations. It's going to be with factor of safety of 3. I'm not using 5 because they can move. It's not like the Twin Towers we had where you couldn't risk anything, and they had to be way much stronger than they needed to be because people were going to be in them. This is going to be hold the mushroom. They can sway a bit. So, and cost. So here you're seeing the breathing tubes. You're seeing the steel and the layout of the two towers. Again, breathing tube, steel detail. This is a typical corner layout. You've got 8, I don't know, what is it, 8? I've got high strength steel on the inside, normal strength on the outside. There's electrical stuff going on, so you got to use electrical tape. You want to isolate some of these components. Then here's my breathing. Oh, so stop. You see now the concrete went in, the first pour. So now there's no more just that black plastic. You've got the concrete on top for the bottom plinth layer. I did 2 pours because I kind of need a level platform for the final pour. A lot of some other reasons. But anyway, here you have the breathing tubes for the air handling units are going to be in. And of course, more steel. And now the second pour is in. And this is basically the state they're in now. They're ready to get the base of the beginning of the towers going. Again, this will one day be a fish tank around the base. You see the air tubes are in, the breathing tubes are in, and that concrete just got poured. And here's a view of that, the way it is now from the top. A detail from the top, getting ready for the base is going to go in. So I'm at the end. If you can't change the world, then change yourself. That's the key. A lot of people say that. It's from the movie, actually, Megalopolis, which is a new movie which I encourage everybody to see. It can be very slow and boring, and that's intentional, by Francis Ford Coppola. You have to see that movie, I think. And basically at the end of the movie, and they have the Twin Towers in that movie, by the way, the rubble of the Twin Towers. If you can't change the world, then change yourself. And so that's kind of what keeps me getting up in the morning, because I think about how the world's changing. It's going too slow for me. The evolution is going too slow for my lifetime. I'm going to be gone a little faster than that. So I want to enjoy it. So I can evolve myself then. I maybe can't evolve anybody else, but I can evolve myself. And I think that's gets me up in the morning and will get me to bed tonight. And here is less is Muir. Part of that change is doing with less. This money machine that's been going so fast, and the war machines, if we could all just kind of calm down a bit and appreciate nature a little more, we might not have to have all this velocity of money and all these commodities and things that people need to buy in order to feel successful and build the house and cover the land and buy more than one house and build the warehouses to hold the Amazon products. Maybe we just need to have less. And less is Muir. That's John Muir. Guess he's kind of controversial these days, but anyway, in the back, in my day, he's a famous guy and he's got my same last name, same clan. And here we are, all of us activists, very happy. We're not too depressed in all this. And this is about when Philippe Petit is really getting excited because it's really happening. He's really confident and it's really a thrill. And he did it. No matter what happens now, he did it. Even if he falls off at this point, he has really experienced that thrill of actually going through that fear window, preparing, doing all the hard work, and having the reward of that peace of mind. Is like, yes, this is worth it. I'm setting an example that people are going to pay attention to as an individual, as an anarchist, a nonviolent anarchist, an individual, and with the Twin Towers. And the truth cannot be stopped, just delayed. That's what I always like to tell people.
Mm.
So I'm at the end.
Oh, that was great. Thank you, Ross.
Good. Well, I hope it was of interest.
Well,
I have a I have a tidbit.
Yeah,
Um,
who's that?
This is Mike Cook.
Oh yeah, hey Mike. Oh good, Mike's on. I didn't see you earlier. Okay.
Yeah, I had to be late. It's my brother's 61st birthday.
Oh great. Well, he's
Yeah,
free.
well, he does it weird. He says I'm now 60 because I've completed that year.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Be 60 in one day tomorrow.
Yeah, it's like that centuries,
Anyway,
yeah.
the tidbit is I spent a lot of time in the Southwest,
Yes.
Tucson and Phoenix. And
Yeah.
one of the things that the indigenous people used for money was seashells.
Ah, right. I saw
They would
something about yeah.
hike all the way down to the Sea of Cortez there in what's now Mexico and gather the seashells and bring them back. And they were valuable because it was such a long, hard journey.
Yeah, and they found I just saw a show the other day about Homo sapiens and how we evolved into the basically to what we are today. And they were making jewelry with these shells a long time ago, like 100,000 years ago. And they say it was an incredible cultural binder. So obviously they were using the jewelry as money back then, some kind of value to trade with. And
Mhm.
so definitely, yeah, shells would have been a big deal.
Yeah, it's pretty neat history all around there.
Yeah, I
Sometimes
think so.
sometimes in the pottery you see the swastika.
Yeah. Oh, did you say swastika? No, the what?
Swastika.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, no, actually,
A lot of folks don't realize that's from the Big Dipper and the
yeah,
positions it's at the solstices and at the equinoxes where it is.
yeah. And
That,
it's where the
that's where the
Nazis
symbol
got,
comes from.
yeah, and I'm
Yeah,
sure it's where the Nazis got it from too. They knew
yeah,
that. Yeah.
yeah.
well,
Yeah. So these,
They weren't Nazis.
oh, yeah. Okay.
The native people,
Oh,
thousands of
no, no,
years
they
ago.
weren't. I'm just saying the SS
Yeah,
knew
yeah,
that, I'm sure. And
yeah. So this is a powerful ancient symbol.
yes,
Yeah, and they stole it.
yeah. Well, I mean, that's, the last 15 years I was riding the skateboard. It's like, well, what about all the other years of humanity? They didn't have the technology necessarily, but they had other technologies,
Hmm.
and it's been going on for tens of thousands of years. It seems like this modern man, the
Right.
Neanderthals were be 200 years, 200,000 years ago. So modern
I have,
human beings.
yeah, I have some friends I think were, partially descended from Neanderthals.
Yeah. Well,
They say there was
well,
interbreeding somewhat, and some of these guys you look at them and it's like, dude, you're a Neanderthal.
well, let's
well,
get back on
that
let's
show
get
I was
Oh,
back
talking
on
I'll
about.
shut
topic.
up.
Yeah, let's get back on topic. So if people have questions about Ross's presentation, go ahead and raise your hand. I do have one question myself. Beat you to it, Richard. No, go ahead, Richard.
Just an incredible set of stories and taking us back through the history of the 9/11 truth movement, particularly in New York. Ross, thank you so much for presenting that to us. It's really awesome to see how busy you were for so long.
Yeah.
Uh, I've been out on the West Coast, and so I thank you so much for bringing us on that journey
Well,
with
all those events where you were the main sponsor of all those things, and I hope you saw that picture of you. I did get in there, one good one of you,
you.
where it's obvious you're saying, no way did they blow up that way. But
Yeah,
I, of course, have many other pictures of you. But I thought, you know what? I'm going to be short on time. Richard's got, everybody knows Richard, and he's getting good publicity. So I thought I better share some of the lesser known people that are necessarily, maybe some of them are not any longer in the movement, or they're not as involved. So I wasn't trying to slight you in any way. I just thought, well, sure. But
sliding.
I knew you wouldn't take it that way. But
Yeah, yeah. Thanks, Ross.
yeah,
All right. So I wanted to get back to what you were talking about with the youth. Yeah, I'm
yes,
particularly interested now that I'm over 70 and it gets harder and harder to go out and do street action. Um, just physical stamina. I'm not as hale and hearty as I used to be. And we're all many of us are whiteheads. Um, we need to get the youth involved, and I really don't know how to reach them. That's actually an item on our agenda following this. And it sounds like you've had some pretty good success with that. If you could talk about that a little bit more.
yeah. I'm so glad for that question because to me it is, pretty much everything about when I go out, and I try to go out every day. So I'll tell you, I told you what they're interested in. They do, Susan, you were saying, well, maybe the towers, will be forgotten. But I'm telling you, the really, really young people, we'll start with them. Let's just start with them. The 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds that see me on the skateboard, they don't point at the skateboard right away, most of them. Well, they start pointing at the towers and they say, Mom, look, the Twin Towers, the Twin Towers. So
Wow.
obviously there are New Yorkers there that are parents that are telling their kids about the Twin Towers because I'm going by pretty quick, and I don't stand around and stop for a lot of people unless they confront me. I'm going. So, they quickly pick it and they say it. And so there's a lot of longevity in the towers then. And all the young people that are in their teens, they love the skateboard. Ooh, sick. He's the towers. It's sick. You don't know how many times I've been called sick. Okay.
That
Sick is a
must be
good
a
term.
compliment,
I know
right?
it's a good term. I
That means
know.
that's
It's
badass, right?
it's the best term. It's the best
Yeah.
term, but it's like sick, that's sick. Or the other thing they've been saying a lot too. But anyway, there's a lot of expressions.
Yeah.
Oh, fire! No, now this year they've changed it. Now it's fire. That is
Oh.
fire. That is fire. So it's a little bit hard for me with the 9/11 stuff. And no, it wasn't the fire. It was the explosives. No, I
Well,
didn't say that, obviously.
the outreach we attempted a little bit on 9/11 when the high schoolers were let out and the junior high school students and high schoolers went by us. Um, their future was stolen because of 9/11. And I'm thinking that this is really why we're doing it.
Yeah, and that's why they're so
Yeah,
sympathetic to the message that we
yeah,
weren't told the truth because they know, hey, it wasn't terrorists did this to us. I mean, Muslim Islamic terrorism.
yeah.
It wasn't that did this to us. And they know it filters right on down to COVID and all these other things. They know this. So and they're not so vested in the system yet. They've been basically there is no system left for them. So it's not
No,
like, oh,
they
okay,
all know that they're going to be in debt for the rest of their
yeah,
lives. They
yeah,
know that a retirement is, a rose-colored garden. I mean, it's just not going to happen to most of them. They know that they probably won't be homeowners, a lot of them.
yeah. Right. Right.
It's the most bleak future generation, and it's all the post 9/11 generation.
Yeah. And it's all the money.
It's because of 9/11,
Yeah.
because of endless wars, because of the loss of our liberties, the escalating debts to pay for these wars.
The student debt that we
Yeah.
bailed ourselves out with in 2008. People don't realize we were gaining more revenue tax than taxes
Mhm.
based on just interest alone that they were paying on the student loan thing, which happened in 2008, the crisis. We invented the student loan, program. Oh yeah, you can go to college and get a nothing degree and you don't have to pay for it. Just get this loan. They've been just
Yeah.
shafted
Yeah.
by the system. And of course, 9/11 is a huge example of that. They know. So they're not like the architecture family that's my age, like in New York City. It's like, thank you for what you're doing. I'd really be doing that, but my wife over there, she won't even want me to be talking to you. And I say, yeah, I understand that. And my children, I can't really, I would love to get involved in this, but I can't because of my kid. Those are people my age and your age. And so yeah, but those younger kids, they don't have anything. They don't want to have kids. They
Yeah.
don't have a house. They don't have a job even that they can count on. Some of them that have jobs or they're going to NYU.
Yeah.
They've said to me, well, I don't want to go at that because I want to get a job with like Goldman Sachs and everything. And I'm like, yeah, you're damn right. You don't want to be 9/11 truth if your objective is to go Goldman Sachs. I try to get them on another tangent, but
Yeah.
so yeah, there's that opening too. It's like, yeah, that's what, in fact, it's an important point. I'm glad you brought it up. We've done our job. Richard Gage did his job. The ball is in their court now. That's the thing. I'm so happy that what happened the last anniversary. We've got the senators and the congressmen and the firefighters and all that, but the majority of the work has been done. The ball is in their court. It doesn't matter what we do, even if nothing happens with what happened this year. The ball's in their court. It's going to be up to them when this thing comes forth, and it is going to come forth. And so it's going to be based on the desperation of everybody and the fact nobody trusts them anymore, and they haven't trusted them since September 11th. And the people that weren't even around for September 11th, they know September 11th changed the world, and they're going to keep knowing that because of people like us, because of people like Richard that did his job. He put the ball in their court, and it's not going to go away. It's there. They're holding that ball, and it's like they're just deciding now. If Trump gets submarined and it could very well happen this month, that Trump's whole agenda falls apart, or it could happen this year or next year, and he's going to feel like he got thrown under the bus. He may be saying, you know what, I'm just gonna do this 9/11 truth thing because that's a horrible thing, and they're going to screw me up. It's like I wouldn't make the comparison to Hitler, but Hitler, they say, once he realized his investors on the Allied side were going to let him lose the war, he got pissed about that. That was towards the end, and that's supposedly when they went really fast forward on all the deaths in the death camps. They weren't killing these apparently these prisoners in the death camps until he realized they were going to let him go. They were going to let him lose that war. And he got pissed about that he was betrayed, and that's when he said, "Okay, I'm gonna." He had Jewish people, Zionists, on his side. Hitler did because it was going to give them the ability to ship out these Jews to have the Holy Land. But then he realized he thought he would win the war though, and he would send them there because they won. No, you're gonna lose the war, and it's still gonna happen, but you're gonna lose the war. He got pissed. He killed everybody. Trump may say, "Look, he's not a violent guy." He's gonna say, so I'm going to lose my agenda. Fine. But I'm also the president. And I can also expose you guys. And what's the best way to do that? And then he'll be calling Ron Johnson if they haven't already talked. And Ron Johnson's going to be like, I respect everything you did. You've been so busy. And what can I do for you? And he's like, well, you know what? He's going to take credit for it. Trump will take all the credit. He'll say, I found some files and, I was aware of some files I found. And so I know that the building was demolished, but the ball's been put in their court because of us, because of Richard and all the people, and
Raul
that's
Angulo. Raul
Angulo, yeah, of course, all those guys. I don't mean to just, yeah,
it just snowballed from his article.
yeah, Yeah.
Now, you had mentioned something I think I heard briefly. I just wanted to correct the record. You said that people were going to forget about you said I said that people were going to forget about the towers. I never said anything like
Yeah.
that.
I think, well, I know when I remember it to be was on one of the war room things. So Gene, I see, is on, and Sandra. I remember it was a while ago. It was about 8 months ago. You didn't say they didn't matter, but we were talking about the Pentagon.
Uh-huh.
And you brought up, you said, the Pentagon's important. We went to war in large part because of the Pentagon. And you
Right.
said something to the effect, well, in the towers, if it was not about the Pentagon, it was just about the towers, people would have forgotten by now, is what you said.
No, 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 no. What I said was if the
Okay.
Pentagon was not hit and it was just the towers, that would not have been enough justification for war.
Actually, because of 7, there was the CIA, DOJ. That would have been enough because it would have been an attack on a government institution.
Mm.
Well, if you want to, yeah, argue that, but I just,
The Pentagon was just so blatant,
Yeah,
though.
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
I kind of disagree with that, but I understand your nuance there.
yeah.
But to me, I mean, maybe it's New Yorkers or just anybody, again, I always say to people, it wasn't when the planes hit, it wasn't that time period was horrible when you heard the Pentagon's been hit and all that. It was walking down that street and seeing only one tower there is what did it to me. It was like, I walked down when the fires were coming to an end. I said, okay, this show is over. I don't want to sit there and watch the towers burn all day long. I'm leaving. I left and went down to a restaurant that I helped design, and they were giving away all the food for free. So I was eating all this high-end food, that they had to get rid of, and we heard on the radio stuff, but there wasn't much, you could only hear the radio. I came up on the street, Fifth Avenue, looked down Fifth Avenue, saw all these zombies coming at me, like just total blank faces, white as sheet faces, walking toward me. Everybody's silent. And I'm looking past them down Fifth Avenue. You could always see the towers, and I'm seeing one tower. And I didn't know what happened. I was like, am I really only seeing one tower? I'm seeing all this dust, big, different smoke, different plume.
Yeah,
And I'm only seeing one tower. And I kept walking. And then I got to this bank down around 42nd Street. Some bank building had one of the big jumbotrons. I'm literally looking at the jumbotron and that helicopter. You remember that helicopter view that has the helicopter right before the tower 1 comes down from the, with the flying around the antenna, the newscopter. And I'm watching that newscopter and that tower, that spire start to fall on the jumbotron. And I look down Fifth Avenue and I'm watching the tower go down in real life, Fifth Avenue. And then I'm looking up at the screen.
Oh.
So it was like, that was another talk about dystopian moment. It was like seeing it on the jumbotron and then looking down and seeing it actually come down in the distance. You couldn't hear a thing from that distance away. It was just like a silent thing. And in the TV, I don't know what happened to that footage. I think we've seen that footage with the helicopter up flying around it and seen when it starts to come down. So that was when I never thought anything like that was going to happen. That was when I was down on my knees. I was like, this now is a different level for me. So for me, it was definitely could have just been the towers. And it would have been like this war that we've had still today. But anyway, so the young people do care about the towers. And yes, the Pentagon, I understand the nuance. Maybe you're right. I don't know.
All right. So next we have Magnus. Magnus, go ahead.
Thank you. Hello, Ross.
Hey, Magnus.
Great presentation,
Yeah.
and thank you. And that was very powerful and very sad that you experienced that stuff on 9/11.
Oh.
Very sad. But are you only in one episode in 9/11 Crimes into Courtroom, or other episodes too?
I'm only in the one, but I heard Richard say something about there's going to be 8 more episodes, and they're going to deal with the big buildings. And of course, that's where I've always felt like I knew the most. But I'm sure Richard, whoever he pulls together for that, will do a good job. But yeah, I'd be happy to be in one of those. I don't want to.
Cool.
I don't want to talk about the Pentagon.
Yeah,
I don't
true,
want to talk
true.
about Shanksville, but yeah.
The towers is the most important, and
Hey,
it's
I'll talk
very
about the money
easily
too.
clickable.
If Richard gets into crime scene courtroom, I may not be an expert witness, but I could potentially be. As I told you, I studied the money trail more than anything to begin with, the economy after that, and so I know a bit about the money trail
Oh, wow, thank
too.
you.
But
Great work.
and I want to get videos into my PowerPoint presentation, so I'm sure you can help me with that.
Oh, wow, wow, yeah. That would have been great, yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm going to keep this thing growing. The more stuff, I'll add stuff from the last event there. What was the event called? I just have forgotten already, but I'm not because I've
Turning the
forgotten.
tide.
Turning the tide?
Turning the tide, yeah, of course.
Yes.
I'll get some slides in there eventually too
Mhm.
of that. That was great, by the way. I was ashamed that first day of the technical issues. Second day, I loved.
Mhm.
Third day, I didn't watch. I was busy watching the second day on the third day.
There
Um, the
was a
Charlie
lot.
Kirk stuff, I'm telling you, is a big thing. Back to your point about the youth, I didn't really get to explain what I think we should
Oh,
do from now. That Turning Point USA, we know that's got to be a big focus point for us in
yeah.
terms of the youth.
Yeah.
And the other thing for us as we get older too, the t-shirts thing, it sounds cliche for the activists to be into the t-shirts, but we've kind of been focused on other things. And I think we need to get really that online store going. So when
Yeah.
I talk to the young people, I can say, because they love a lot of this stuff, that skateboard I want to get built for some other things, and they love the towers on there. Um, we need to get that online store going. And again, the kids don't have money, as we know.
Mm.
So it can't be too high end. I got these good ideas for high end t-shirts, but which I think, because they are hard to make, some of these ones I'm doing, they are kind of couture type t-shirts. But that's what I'm hoping, where the boomers and some of these older generation people can fund, maybe we can get these t-shirts made and get them really nice, high quality t-shirts that can be affordable. I've always thought about giving out stuff like that to the homeless. And a lot of people don't want to see homeless wearing with the message of 9/11 truth, because obviously they're bitter about it all. But I don't. You got to have respect for humanity, and if a guy can use a T-shirt and he wants to wear it, and and he might start talking about Judy Wood or whatever, but I still think getting it out there as T-shirts is important, and shoes, like I was saying. The
Mm.
kids love that stuff, and if we can be on social media, I'm not into that, but like Gene is great with that. Gene's doing a good job. He's got a lot on his plate.
Yeah.
Um, but so, hopefully there's more of us, and I will try to get into that. I'm, focused on building those towers. There's a lot of physical energy I still have, I think. I want to get those things topped out. It's going to take a little while. To me, that's like the thing. That's what I do the best. I'm not the best at all the social media or anything, and I don't particularly like it that much, especially now because it's just, you do get anything that's good, it just gets stopped. It just
Hmm.
gets censored. So
Right.
maybe there's ways around it if you're really sophisticated, but I don't want to get in there. So hopefully we can, because they're taking pictures of me and the skateboard, and it's going on TikTok and on Instagram. They're always asking me that, but I know it doesn't go viral. I'm sure it gets taken right away because the message is pretty clear. All those stickers that came from Les Jamison. I didn't
Hmm.
mention he's the one that gave me all those stickers when he was moving out of the city. And, and I got a lot of them from A&E. I got stuff from A&E. I've got, so that stuff's a message that you can't mix up. That's a very clear message. And it's a message that won't fly on Instagram, even though kids are posting it. But it gets out there, and it does. They know me. I tell you what, they know me on the streets in New York City. The
Right.
kids,
That is wonderful. That
and
is.
they call me out by my name. I've been called out by my name. I don't even know who they are. I only heard in the distance, Ross. It's like
Ah.
Ross. I don't even tell you my name. And then you're the 9/11 Truth guy. You're the, Ross. I'm like,
Wow.
hi. I don't know you, but you know me. So anyway,
That's fabulous. All
yeah.
right. So next we have Roy who has a question. Go ahead, Roy.
Wait a minute. Hold on. Okay, actually, I have two questions. I didn't quite get you on the grand jury business. Were you accepted? Were you accepted into the grand jury?
No one there could believe it. Everybody came up to me during that time. It was luckily I only had to serve 2 weeks. Everybody was like, I can't believe they took you. When I went to the
And then they complained about the shirts later, but they
yeah, and then
accepted you in the shirt.
yeah, but I went to I know, and a lot of I went to the bars afterwards that are down there that I know the people that's where I ride the skateboard, and all those bartenders they were like, I can't believe they've taken everybody was like you're on the grand jury and you're wearing that stuff. I can't even believe they take you. And then they said they're gonna ship you away to some dark prison somewhere. And that got me a little scared because I started thinking about Epstein and that's the neighborhood where a lot of that stuff can happen. I'm like, okay, so I was a little bit, like a little bit of fear in me, like some of the stuff. I was like, how far am I going to go? Am I going to take the skateboard, And but no, it was all fine. But yeah,
Okay, well,
everybody.
speaking
And
of
every day I
bizarre,
wore that shirt. Every day I wore a shirt. They made me
yeah,
take the one off, and it was
yeah,
every day I got, and the
okay.
shoes. I started wearing the shoes too.
And it was a terrorist trial, you said.
Well, one of them, see, the grand jury, you don't have
Did,
to, yeah,
were they indicted? Were they indicted? Did they finally go to a major trial, a full trial?
what we did was really great. And I was one of the main people that got this done. They hit us, they hit you with a lot of cases. You just got to decide if it's going to go to trial. As Richard knows, the grand jury just decides, oh, yeah, this is worthy of going to trial. So it's a
That's the
lot better.
question. Was there just one case? There were several cases?
No, there's like several. They give you like 20 cases. You see like 4 or 5 cases a day.
And how many went to trial?
We sent like 90% to trial. And
Hmm.
about 10% we dismissed one and we deferred on another, which basically will lead to a dismissal.
And
Um,
Were these Muslim terrorists or general terrorists or
um,
white
no, these
supremacist
were not.
terrorists?
These were not. It was like they can charge you for terrorism for a variety of crimes now that are not necessarily Islamic terrorism. It's like a guy came at you with a knife.
I'm just wondering what was the general demographic of the
I'm trying to
terrorists?
remember why they. That one was a kind of a more of a drug thing, but there were a few people involved. It was kind of a gang crime.
Uh,
So they,
Crime. Yeah, right. Yeah.
yeah, and the terrorism guys were there basically just because of the camera footage they had. It wasn't no, but they were called to the scene though. They had to identify the guys. They called the terrorism police, and it could be
Hmm.
just because they were in the neighborhood. But they what they did, they do the tricky. And Richard knows it's why it's perfect approach for us to have taken. I was very proud to be part of that grand jury effort. Knew that it would probably not go anywhere, but we have to set the precedent. That's the whole thing. We got to get the ball in the court. We got to set the precedent. Future generations, they can't say, "Oh, well, they just didn't care. They didn't use the system. It works. They just didn't use it." No, we tried, and it didn't work.
Well,
So
my other question is, you were
yeah.
talking about somebody who had spoken against the bizarre theory, and I didn't see what he had up on the screen there, or I wasn't acquainted with the person. Was that
Oh,
the bizarre no planes theory, or the bizarre secret military technology cold fusion DEW theory?
it might have been. I think it was. I'm pretty sure it was about my theory, which is not a do theory, but it's Richard knows about it a little bit. So does everybody. A lot of people here, but it's about how they had the explosives were built into the building, and I think they had a way to demolish the buildings from their inception. So a lot of people have a problem with that, and
Oh, it's sort of a subset of the controlled demolition
yeah, yeah,
thing.
yeah.
Okay, okay,
And
okay. Thank you. That was it.
a lot of people don't like that theory that are in this room actually. But I'll put it up against anybody's theory, And let's talk about that just a second. It's like what we really got to do. And I think it was on one of my slides. I just didn't catch it.
Oh, you,
RFP.
you're not saying that the bizarre theory that the guy was talking against is your theory, or is that the bizarre theory your theory?
Yeah, I think it's my theory is
Oh,
what I was
okay, that's a
saying.
surprise. Okay, I thought you were
Some
talking about
people
some
they
bizarre theory that, yeah, okay, your
well
bizarre theory.
they think it's bizarre, not maybe not bizarre, but just not correct for whatever reasons. But the what I think we need to do so we can get rid of this Judy Woods conversation, which is definitely a part of it. It's a psyop. I mean, I can tell she's being promoted and built. I don't know if it started as a psyop, but now it is. It is being promoted as part of the infiltration regime of this, which we have so much of, as we know. I didn't even talk about that. But so this Judy Woods thing needs
Well,
to be put down.
they say that the other ones are the infiltration, so that's
Well,
a wash.
right, but the way to
I'm not
get
going to argue with you, you know.
right, well, the way to get around it is we got to get to a point where we say, okay, everybody's on the table here, Judy. We want an RFP. I'm Henry Kissinger, and I'm going to do this, and I need a request for proposal. This is what you do in the business, and in the demolition business, I'm sure you do it too. It's like, okay, we're not sure who we're going to hire, but we want proposals. Who's going to blow these things up? Who's going to take it through? So we need your RFP. So and when you do an RFP, Jonathan Jonathan knows this, Gene knows this, Richard knows this. When you're asked to do a job, they ask for an RFP. You got to, how am I going to do this job is what you got to tell them. And you got to put down man hours, you got to put down costs, you got to put down schedule, all the things that Gene does every day, that I used to do every day, that I'm doing now to build my own towers, that Richard used to do every day, that Jonathan Cole used to do every day. Anybody that's going to put together a proposal that's actually going to talk about how the towers came down has to say what their RFP would have been. And Judy Woods is going to get up there and say, well, I worked for Boeing, and my RFP is, I got a PhD. So give me all I need is
Well, she has a
$100,000.
500-page book that
Yeah,
is
right.
receiving
Well, give me the
good
book, and
comments even by its critics. I mean,
right. So read
uh,
the book, and then hire me. Read the book and hire me. That's my RFP. So then, how do I do this? If you can read her book, can you do it? What I'm saying is, if you can read, when you read my proposal, you
well,
can
she brought
follow
a
it.
lawsuit in 2007. Are you aware of that?
No, I'm
That
not aware of that.
I think it went to the Supreme Court.
Yeah,
And Morgan Reynolds did one too. This is not general knowledge.
yeah,
And the court, the case was dismissed despite the law, and they even explicitly said we are dismissing this case in spite of the law. So it just
yeah,
got thrown out, on
yeah.
the
Right.
basis of nothing.
No,
So
no, we got
don't say she didn't do anything. She had a lawsuit that went to the Supreme Court.
yeah.
But
I
I don't want to get into argument about
no,
it.
I just want to say that forgetting
You
about
answered my question. Thank you.
okay.
Yeah.
But quickly, I want to end on that because I think it's super important for the movement now because some people are not on the same page about that we need to come up with how it was done. Been a logical next step for a long time. And really it is because it'll get rid of whoever's proposal really isn't serious. It doesn't matter what a judge says. It doesn't matter. It matters what the client who's going to hire you to do that job says. If Henry Kissinger read her book and and then he hired people to do whatever it is she describes in her book, to carry out. Boy, that's an RFP. I'd like to see how that was done. Let's put some numbers to it, Judy. Let's tell me how many hours it took. Tell me what kind of testing was done. What are the testing protocols? I'm not going to just let you, oh, here, I'm Judy Woods. Trust me. Here's my book. They're going to say, well, what are your tests? What are the guarantees? That's what you do with an RFP. So when you read my proposal, you're going to be able to step by step say, yeah, I can do this. Yeah, I can. Or maybe Richard will say, no, you can't do that. So it's impossible. End of the day, we have to have testing too, experiments. As Feynman said, no matter what you say, no matter what your mathematical proofs, like Judy has, good ones maybe, you've got to be able to have an experiment that demonstrates it. That's a physical experiment. Otherwise, it's wrong. Feynman, the scientist that did the Columbia disaster, is very famous for his method, his scientific approach. And he says you got to have an experiment, and it's got to be proven that yes, something like that could happen in my experiment. It did. If it didn't, you're wrong. We need an experiment. I want Jonathan. For $10,000, we can do an experiment, and I can get a piece of concrete to blow up and be detonated, is what I think. And but I'd have to show that would be in an experiment. And if I can't get the concrete to blow up under certain conditions that could only be met on that day, then I will be wrong. But otherwise, I can put all the numbers to it. It makes, and Richard, they can put numbers to theirs. Jonathan Cole can put numbers. How many cutting charges is it? How many columns were there? How many linear feet of cutting charge are you? How many guys
Well,
are
of
going
course,
to
what's your, I don't, let's just cut this off because
Yeah.
the thing's gone on long enough. But
Okay.
the if it's a secret technology, and the rulers are the only ones who have the secret technology, she's not going to be able to replicate it, and it's unreasonable to expect that.
I disagree. I
How
don't
is she
think
supposed to do something with secret technology?
it's science. It's not politics. It's science. There's other. If it's science, it's science. It means it can be followed. It means it can be reproduced. That's Feynman's method.
Not if it's secret, not if it's a
Well,
secret
you got.
technology.
If you're a smart scientist, you figure out the secret. That's what science is. And
We can go back and forth on this for another half hour.
science is all about uncovering the secrets. Uncovering the
So
secrets.
I think, Roy, when you said bizarre theory, his presentation, I don't think said bizarre theory. It was Bazant theory.
Oh
No,
yeah,
no.
that's right. Yeah,
Oh, it was
sorry.
Bazant theory.
Yeah,
Oh my goodness! I
Yes.
thought
yeah,
he said it several times. I thought he said
yeah,
bizarre theory. Yeah. Okay. Thank
yeah.
you.
No, I'm
Thank you.
sorry. I'm not articulate sometimes. Yeah, that
Yeah.
is on theory. Yeah.
Yeah. So do we have any other questions? Because we do have another part of our program, which is not going to be recorded, but it's part of what we do every time we meet. Our agenda, and we have a pretty long agenda, and some people on this call have to get home to their wives.
I just got two quick things. One, Judy
Yes.
Wood's K Tom lawsuit that she did was going to, from Roland Angle had shared this, that it was financially going to benefit her. Any monies won would have gone to her personally, which is interesting. And two, being a devil's advocate for myself on what I said about Seven having housing the largest CIA office outside of Langley, and the DOJ being a reason why it would have been. Now I'm contradicting myself, and I'm going to say that was Seven was anticipated to be collateral damage. So if it's collateral damage, it wasn't like directly attacked. So you probably could get around that. So that's all.
Unless they
So
could prove that it was controlled demolition.
we got to get to bed because we long work day, and then we went to the house and ripped out carpet. But thank you. That was a great presentation, Ross, and
Thanks. Thank
love
you.
you all.
Thank you. Yes, thank you so much, Ross, for joining us. It's been a delight. I love your upbeat attitude, even though you've been at this so long. You far from burnt out. An
Well, we got to
inspiration.
be positive.
An inspiration. I so
Right.
much appreciate you.
Well, you've been
Thank
that
you.
for me, so I wouldn't be having that inspiration now for you guys. Boston Truth came before I was into the truth movement. So you guys, because of you guys,
Wow.
you and Richard and Gene too, I was seeing him from a distance. I'd say, who's this guy, Gene? He's got LEDs in his car. He's running signs. He's doing all that stuff. What we have to do is like, he's doing that. This guy,
Yes.
Gene, when I met him, he was like a superstar already, and I was just starting.
Nah,
So
thank you.
Well, this is the best part of doing all this work is we're meeting such great people.
oh, quickly, I see Lawrence Fine is on here too. And
Mm-hmm.
hey, Lawrence, I do agree. You could definitely drill a core, drill through that large elevator, get down and place some kind of device down there. But I don't think that's how it happened, actually. But we won't talk about that stuff now. Too much time.
All right.
But you could drill the hole and you could place the device down there. If
So
that's any
we're gonna
consolation.
stop the recording
Yeah.
and go on to the next part of our meeting. You're all welcome to stay and join the agenda portion. But again, thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. I can't wait to get this up on Rumble and YouTube and share it with those who could not join us tonight. Thank you,
Thank
Ross.
you.